Hello, users, and welcome to another episode of Flicks Done Quick. And on this episode, I am going to be reviewing the first season of the Netflix show House of Cards. And House of Cards, if you don't know anything about it at all, it's basically kind of like a very dramatic storytelling of like a potential like world where United States politics are like, disgusting, dirty, slimy garbage corruption involving, scandals and sex and murder. And, so it's in like a make believe where that isn't, the reality of how we all live in. But it's done well. It's a good show. It's got good cinematography, good characters. I think one thing about this show that I really appreciated is just how fleshed out and how, like, how every character kind of has their own unique thing that they're constantly kind of like making sure the audience is aware of. Like, it does a good job of kind of like actually, organizing a lot of like how people think, because you constantly have to like keep in mind how people are going to behave in reaction to like a lot of certain events. And there's like also a lot of few points where like there's another thing that they do in this show where like, the main character will like talk to the screen, which is like, oh hey, that's me, hi, that thing. So like it kind of builds the illusion that like you're kind of on, like, what's going on and on the game the whole time. But then there's a lot of stuff where like even the main characters are going to do stuff that the audience doesn't know, and that happens quite a bit. Which I think is pretty cool. So it does a good job of like keeping you hooked, because like, throughout all the events that are occurring, like even things like as simple as like, oh man, I never thought I'd be entertained by watching like, something like a strike or something, but like, it does a good job of like showing both sides, even though like obviously one is clearly like the thing I like about it is it does such a good job of showing the both sides, but then like it's so obvious which side is evil and scum. And it does also a good shot of like showing you just how scummy a lot of these people are. Like for example, Claire, who's the wife of the main character, who's Frank. um like she runs a nonprofit, and she's constantly like dealing with corporations and politicians, and then like even going as far as to like fire her staff because like, she made a deal with someone or whatever, and like just ruining the lives of like dozens of people just because, like that kind of stuff. Like the portrayal of the smug smarmy liberal is just really epic. I think it's really well done. um I like how the show is like, it shows you like the Republicans for like the first season, they're like no Republicans even anywhere in the show, like at all. Pretty much it's just all Democrats, and like they're all like literal dumpster like tier like human beings. Like and it's just like it's very very fun to watch, because like, like especially like, the current political climate of 2018, like the Democrats are constantly trying to like claim to be the good guys, and we know the shit that they've done, throughout the history books. So I like how a show like House of Cards does a good job of kind of like, making bad Democrats like the more like, because it is more interesting how they have to like balance like, oh, saving people's lives with, making sure we save people, just enough people's lives to make like, there's this like one part where like, they're talking about saving jobs or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, we can save about half of them, and it's just like no care in the world for like, the other half of the people that are losing everything in their lives. But it's pretty good. My about the first season, like as a first season, I'm kind of like ranting and rambling here. But about the first season basically kind of like just builds everything up. Like the main character starts out as the Democratic majority whip, I think, for the House of Representatives, and he wants to get into the executive branch, and he made like deals with the president, but then the president kind of snubbed him. So like the first series is kind of him like slowly getting in, like weaseling his way into the executive branch, and then kind of like, spoiler alert, by the end is when he like usurps the vice presidency, which is pretty good. And I think like the creative methods that they kind of used, like factoring in like, the actual political systems and how things work, are pretty cool. So they made it like set up in the most convoluted possible way, which like if you don't know much about how like, US politics works and stuff, like I'm sure it's a lot more interesting. But, like, you know, for someone like me that kind of follows politics enough to, like, know exactly how all this stuff works and how, like, they manage to weasel their way in there with all, like, the kind of transactions, is, you know, it's fun. It's fun. There's a lot of, like, detective work in this show, which I feel like is pretty cool, especially when how they mix up the, whether or not the audience is in on it, you know, from, like, you know, area to area. I think it's pretty cool. I also like how they have, like, the good guy politician, Russo, who's, like, you know, trying to be a good person, and then they kind of, like, slowly strangle the life out of him throughout the first season. And it's kind of sad to see, especially near the end, because, like, you know, it's, like, all his fault or whatever for the most part. You know, like, all his fault. You know, I could go on, like, a, you know, a 45-minute diatribe of fucking capitalism, but I'm not going to do that in this video review. But, you know, they kind of make it look like as, you know, they being, like, you know, the bad people behind the scenes, make it look like it's some, like, you know, try hard politician who's trying to clean up, like, falling apart because he's just a bad person. But in reality, like, you have all the people behind the scenes kind of, like, slowly, like, playing, like, Jenga with his life, and it's just, like, you know, that kind of stuff is, like, pretty brutal to watch, and it's, like, you know, it's interesting because, you know, it's exactly how it fucking works. And anyway, so I like House of Cards. It's a good show. And I could probably talk more about it, but, you know, I'm slightly intoxicated, and I'm going to go watch season 2 now. So hopefully you enjoyed my review, and if not, then tell me what I did wrong, and maybe I will issue a remastered Redux edition of this review. It is possible. If the budget would allow us to fit that in there, squeeze it in, maybe I'll do a remaster, like a new dub or something. I'll do a new dub of this review. So if you liked it, let me know. If you didn't, we'll see what we can do. And be sure to upvote me on Steam, and follow me on Twitter, and then, like, you know, follow me on my website, you know, follow my blog, follow me on what else do I have? I have some other stuff, so go follow me there too. And okay, bye, I'm done talking.